Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app for free to do your listening. And that app is, of course, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts. Really would love to get your thoughts on what happened at the Nuggets press conference. 719-247-1313. You could call or text in your thoughts, or you can tweet them at me at Gingerly Tweets. If you did not see it, don't worry. I'm bringing you all the highlights over the course of the program. I'll just tell you this right off the top. It was weird. It was a very weird, bordering on bizarre press conference from the Denver Nuggets, which is not usually like them. I mean, you could say what you want about some of the decisions Josh Kroenke has made, but I don't think I ever come away with this current iteration of the Denver Nuggets going, that was weird. I may come away disagreeing with some of what is said by Josh Kroenke or Michael Malone or David Adelman or, Calvin Booth, but it's not bizarre. Today was bizarre. And a big reason why is because this whole arrangement is actually bizarre. To appoint Ben Tenzer and John Wallace, essentially co-general managers, is a bizarre thing to do. Josh Kroenke would have another word to describe it.
Most everything that has got us to this point has been unorthodox. We've hired first-time guys before, and our best player is the 41st pick in a very unorthodox manner, the way he plays the game. So everything about us is unorthodox.
Can I just say off the top that moving forward, can we have a moratorium on anyone on the Denver Nuggets acting like they knew what Nikola Jokic would be? I mean, the way that Josh Kroenke is, and I'm not saying there's no credit to be extended to the Denver Nuggets brain trust or their scouting department, right? But this idea that like they intentionally built their team around a second round pick. Yeah, when you realize that he was going to be a generational player or had the capability of being a generational player, you didn't look to the second round with a crap-eating grin on your face saying, oh, they let Jokic fall to us. You know what always happens with the draft? Fanboys on social media tweeting out, how did the NFL or the NBA let my favorite team have this demon? Like, they messed up so bad. And sometimes you kind of feel that. Like, there are teams like in the NFL, the one that comes to mind is the Ravens, where they end up with the guy and you go, how did they end up with him? Like, they're at the tail end of the first round and they end up with one of the best players in the draft. Like, there are some front offices, there are some drafts, there are some players that you go, how did that guy fall? No one thought that about Nikola Jokic. So I already have an issue with this. That Josh Kroenke is using the fact that Nikola Jokic was a second-round pick as a justification for essentially reinventing the wheel when it comes to front offices. You didn't plan on Nikola Jokic being what he is. You pivoted when you saw some early signs that Nikola Jokic had a chance to be a special player. And I think you see this with the Patriots too, like the Patriots acting like they knew Tom Brady was going to be Tom Brady. Like, stop. No, you didn't. You saw some traits in him that you liked, and you deserve credit for that. But please don't think we're stupid that you just sat by and you said, we're going to be able to get Tom Brady in the 6th round, and we're just going to sit idly by, twiddling our thumbs, laughing all the way to the bank because no one's going to take him, including us. Because we know he's only going to be available in the 6th round, and he's going to become the greatest football player to walk planet Earth. Okay? There's a line here. There's a line but from what credit the Nuggets do deserve and how much of this is luck and great fortune, and also a credit to Nikola Jokic, mind you. So I get it. Yeah, their best player is a 2nd round pick. Okay, but we're done with that. Okay, I know we've never let go of Tom Brady and when he was drafted. Can we start now and let go of when Nikola Jokic was drafted? The fact of the matter is, he is the best player on planet Earth. How he got there, we all know. Okay, but he's there. And my biggest issue is that you're trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to how a front office operates when you are in the middle, I'll say, but very close to the end of a championship window closing. Okay, does this feel like the time to look at what's going on across the league and go, it's not for us. We have a better path. We have a better way of doing things. Because our best player is a 2nd round pick. I don't think it's the right justification. I don't think it's the right time to do this. The Denver Nuggets very much need, and I've been saying this, they have 2 paths. One is you take one of your quote-unquote stars, one of your core players that's not Nikola Jokic, and you get a better version of them. Okay? And you almost lean in to the fact that you are right up against the second apron and all this kind of stuff, but you figure out a way, let's just get a better version of what we have. Or you conform and get in line with everyone else. The Boston Celtics today just dumped Drew Holiday. Actually, I don't think they really dumped him. I actually kind of like the deal for Boston, if I'm being honest. Different player in Anthony Simons, but I like Anthony Simons. So they didn't dump him for nothing. So if anything, I don't want to get too far down this road, but if anything, it shows that it's not the worst thing in the world if you take one of your highly paid players and trade him to a team like Boston found in Portland that wants a veteran championship level player to help lead a young core. And that's why I've been throwing out the Detroit Pistons as a landing spot for Jamal Murray for 2 months now. So, but back to the point I was on. I think that the Nuggets very much need to be orthodox right now. They need to be conformist. They need to get in line with the trend that's going on in the NBA and try to rebuild their team. If they're the last one in, right? They were the last team that won a title under the different financial rules. Then why are they going to be the last one to adjust? Like, they had a unique opportunity here to build their team the old way, win, and then see where the NBA was going and try to pivot quicker, and now they're slow to do it, and I don't even know if they're willing to do it at all. Co-general managers, that's the plan here. But I'll tell you what the thinking is, and you can agree with it or disagree with it. I'm not telling you that this is the right way to go, because I've been very clear over the last few minutes that I am not on board with this idea, and I don't think it's going to work the way that Josh Kroenke thinks it will. But what Josh Kroenke is looking at is they're not going to pivot. They're not going to dump any of their core players in order to get younger, deeper, cheaper. They're not going to do it. Okay? They like the guys they have. They like Murray. They like Porter. They like Gordon. They like Jokic. And they like Christian Brown, for that matter. And they feel like when they're healthy, that they are one of the best starting fives in all of basketball. John Wallace actually brought that up explicitly in the press conference today. They feel like they have it right. So they're not going to dump those guys. So what they need moving forward is they need a cap guy to figure out these aprons. That's Ben Tenzer. And they need a draft guy, which is John Wallace. A player development guy, a scout, if you will, a high-ranking scout. And I don't mean that to diminish what John Wallace's role is going to be, or Ben Tenzer's. Like, they're both important. You need that. But usually you have somebody at the top of the organizational flow chart that takes in information from those kinds of people. The Nuggets person is Josh Kroenke. So any big decisions that are going to be made, like the report from Shams Charania that the Denver Nuggets were a wild card suitor for Kevin Durant, and I asked the question yesterday, who's making the call? It sounds like it's Josh Kroenke. If there is a player of note available and the Nuggets are at least somewhat interested, Josh Kroenke's the one picking up the phone. Because one thing that I gained from this is I don't even know if they, being the Denver Nuggets, fully understand how this is going to work. The question was asked, if you're both essentially the same rank, how are you going to solve a disagreement? Basically, how are you going to break a tie? Here's Ben Tenzer's answer to that question.
I honestly think it's really healthy to disagree, and we have a great group, some of the front offices over there, and we disagree constantly. But what's important is, we make a decision together, and we're united. And we have great leaders, Josh, Mr. Kroenke, Kevin Demoff, even Mike Neary, who's a leader at KSC. We have great people around to help navigate these things.
But how are you going to do it? How are you going to decide if John Wallace believes, let's pretend for a moment the Denver Nuggets have a draft pick tomorrow night, which they don't. And let's say, just to use something in the news, Ace Bailey, one of the two stars from Rutgers, not making a great impression on NBA teams. All of a sudden, he starts to fall. Okay? The talent is undeniable. But some questions about the way he's handled this process, questions about, can he fit in with the team where he's not the number one guy, all that kind of stuff. Let's say a player like that falls. Or actually, you know what? Here's a better one. Michael Porter Jr., the next Michael Porter Jr. The medicals say, from some teams say, he's never going to make it in the NBA. The talent is undeniable, but there's some other piece of information, character concerns, injury concerns, whatever it might be, that are there. And all of a sudden, the Denver Nuggets are on the clock. Who ultimately, if if Ben Tenzer is like, I don't know if it's worth investing X number of dollars in this guy as a first-round pick, and John Wallace is like, he's super talented, who is the person that wins out in that scenario? We all get it. We get the stuff that's all in the self-development books, that disagreement is okay and it's supposed to be collaborative. Like, we understand all of that. We hear Jordan Peterson's podcast. Like, we know all of this stuff. Who's in charge? Because even Josh Kroenke said today that he's not going to be around forever. Here's Josh Kroenke on what his involvement is going to be with this operation.
I think in times of transition, I need to be a little bit more hands-on. And so I'm going to be around quite a little bit, as these guys are kind of assuming their roles, making sure things are moving smoothly. But at a certain point, I'm not saying I let go of the rope, but you have to let people do their jobs. And my role with the Nuggets is not a daily one. And so these guys, I'll be checking in with them, probably, every few days, weekly. And then as the season starts, the cadence of those conversations changes based on kind of what's going on. So, no, I'm just excited to get to work with these two guys. Like I said, I think they complement each other really well, and I'm excited to see them continue to grow.
I mean, the answer is that Josh Kroenke breaks the tie. Like, just say it. We all read the Shams tweet that made a special point to bring up that both of them answer to Josh Kroenke. Why couldn't Josh Kroenke today just say, I'm the ultimate decision maker with the Denver Nuggets? At some point, I'm not going to be, and I will let you know. But right now, if Ben Tenzer and John Wallace disagree, one can't overrule the other. They have to call me and I weigh in. Why can't he say that? And it just added to how bizarre this thing was, because this model, this front office, is very difficult to comprehend. Right? It's not something that's being done widely across the league. And today was the opportunity for Josh Kroenke to explain it clearly and eloquently and put everyone's minds at ease. But even he just regurgitated some from an earlier press conference. Yeah, we know at times of transition, but a year from now, 6 months from now, are you going to be in charge? Are you in charge of this thing? When Giannis all of a sudden says, I've had it with the Milwaukee Bucks, and he becomes available at the trade deadline, who's making that decision? I think it's Josh Kroenke, but he wouldn't even say it. And he had so many opportunities to be able to do it. So as far as Wallace and Tenzer go, yeah, they're equal. How are disagreements going to be figured out? Well, all they can agree on is disagreements are good. Maybe Josh Kroenke himself. I'll give him one more chance here, even though I heard this already. So I know what he's going to say. But here's Josh Kroenke on who the person is, not for the draft, not for some mid-level free agent that's going to make $5 million. Like, if a big opportunity, like, I don't know, Luka Doncic becoming available, or Kevin Durant, or Giannis, who's making that call to try and land him with the Denver Nuggets?
I think that, from the outside looking in, sometimes people have a false sense of how things actually go down in the professional sports world. Sometimes that's owner talking to owner. Sometimes that's president talking to president. That's basketball operations staff talking to basketball operations staff. There's a lot of different ways that deals get done in the NBA, and a lot of that is through relationships. And I think that our organization has great relationships at all levels throughout the league, and we'll continue to have different conversations in different ways with different teams, with different people.
How are the Denver Nuggets going to become a champion again? Relationships. That's Josh Kroenke's answer. Relationships. Again, not answering the question. And while he's giving that non-answer, he's also, if I don't know if you picked up on it, but it's a microcosm of what this entire thing is. Josh Kroenke thinks that he's smarter than everybody. Are you picking up on that with the audio I've already played you? He thinks he has cracked the code. He thinks they are blazing a trail with what they are doing. And us simpletons who think that you need somebody with president or general manager on their business card that will call up other teams and ask for players in a trade or sit across the table from an agent, somebody that is an ultimate authority, that doesn't need to happen. Why are you guys so fixated on it? We have reinvented NBA front offices. You don't understand how this works. I do. Okay. I mean, that's the sense that I got. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. And yet, that wasn't any of what I just played you is not the most bizarre thing that anybody said today, sitting at that table. I will give you the most bizarre thing that was said today, coming up next on Extra Sports 1300. Switchbacks FC back in action at Widener Field tomorrow night for 719 Community Night against San Antonio FC in the Jägermeister Cup. The first fans through the gates at 6 will get a limited edition Switchback scarf. That's tomorrow night. Gates open at 6. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. Reacting to the press conference with Josh Kroenke and new co-GMs essentially in John Wallace and Ben Tenzer. Take your reaction at 719-247-1313. And normally I would go right to it, but when I set up the most bizarre thing, I want to pay that off right away. So setting aside this new organizational structure and everything, there was a question today asked to Ben Tenzer about the second apron. Right? Is it acting like a hard salary cap? I believe Vinny Benedetto asked the question. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I'll just give Vinny credit because he does great work. But then Josh Kroenke kind of interjected, I guess. Ben Tenzer had a very simple answer, and that was the other thing, that you didn't really get much from John Wallace and Ben Tenzer, which you can somewhat understand given that they have not held a position such as this before, and I'm not going to kill them for it. Like, it would be nice if they could eloquently explain their vision for the Denver Nuggets. They couldn't really do it today. But I'm always about the actions, right? If Ben Tenzer and John Wallace go out and they make some move this offseason, that's what's going to matter more. But right now, the questions are, how is this going to work? So they're asking about the second apron. Okay. Here's Josh Kroenke getting in the mix on this question. And it starts in a very normal way because KCP is the player that we always harken back to. And then it takes a strange turn. Take a listen.
There was a lot of conversations last summer about KCP and us re-signing him and around the second apron. And we never really got any pointed questions about that, or at least I didn't. And it was a fascinating one because we really did every exercise looking through retaining him and what that meant under the new rules. And, you know, I think that for us as an organization, going into that second apron is not necessarily something that we're scared of. I think that there are rules around it that we needed to be very careful of with our injury history. The wrong person gets injured and very quickly you're into a scenario where that I never want to have to contemplate, and that's trading number 15.
Wait, what? So first, he says that they're not scared of going into the second apron. Okay, basically saying that they let go of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope just because they thought that he wouldn't be as good of a player, wouldn't be worth the money, all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine. You agree with it, disagree with it, whatever. Moving on. So he says they're not scared, but then he proceeds to then spin a nightmarish scenario in which any random player, or he says the wrong player, I don't know who that is. Wish somebody would have followed up. And who's the wrong player that will then lead to trading Nikola Jokic? Because we want to protect that player at all costs. They have now become, Nikola Jokic isn't the most important player on the Denver Nuggets. This wrong, quote unquote, wrong player that could potentially get hurt leading to the trade of Nikola Jokic is the most important member of the Denver Nuggets. So let's identify who that is. Let's wrap him in bubble wrap, and let's make sure that nothing happens to him. The wrong player gets hurt, and he has to contemplate trading Nikola Jokic. Help me help your fellow listener. What does one have to do with the other? Let's say let's pick out a guy that has been hurt. Clearly, he's not the wrong player to get hurt because he's constantly hurt. Michael Porter Jr. gets hurt in some form or fashion. Is that the player that triggers the doomsday scenario in which they have to trade Nikola Jokic? Is it Jamal Murray? Because they played multiple postseasons without him. They didn't decide at that point they needed to trade Nikola Jokic. Aaron Gordon just got hurt before Game 7 of the OKC series. Is he that wrong player? Who is the player? Like, all joking aside, I legitimately want to know. Who is this player that would get hurt leading to Nikola Jokic being traded? Because the answer should be no one. No one could possibly make the Denver Nuggets trade Nikola Jokic. I mean, I'm struggling with what that even means. So if player X gets hurt because they're in the second apron, again, I'm trying to follow the logic here. Player X gets hurt. Because they're in the second apron, they have no recourse to be able to replace him. Okay, I think that's right, because under the second apron, every dollar has to match and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So then your only real recourse, you couldn't bring anybody in. You would have to dump somebody. Okay? Why is that player Nikola Jokic? Let's say it's Michael Porter. Why is Jamal Murray not the player that you have to trade? And why do you have to put Nikola Jokic's face on this nightmare scenario? Nobody asked that. Nobody asked any questions about trading Nikola Jokic. Josh Kroenke brought that up today. This idea that somewhere in the dark recesses of his brain is the thought of trading Nikola Jokic. It has to be triggered by a series of events, which apparently is not really a series. It's just the wrong player getting hurt. I understand that if you're in the second apron, you have very low flexibility and you have to make money work. And really the only shedding of contracts that you could do is kind of what we saw with the Kevin Durant trade, is you put him onto a team that isn't in the second apron or the first apron, right? But again, why is that Nikola Jokic? Why would one injury cause the Denver Nuggets to pull off essentially what Nico Harrison did a few months ago? I don't understand it, other than to say that Josh Kroenke has moved to start weaponizing Nikola Jokic against us. And here's what I mean by that. So much of the discourse surrounding the Denver Nuggets is very much Jokic versus the organization. The organization is letting him down. His teammates are letting him down. And Jokic can do no wrong, right? Everything he does is right. Everything everyone else on the Denver Nuggets does is wrong. So Josh Kroenke trying to, I guess, flip that paradigm or something, saying, imagine a world where we don't have Nikola Jokic. Like, almost stop pitting Jokic versus this organization, because it should be, it's together. Jokic is a part of the organization. We drafted him. We developed him. We surrounded him with enough talent to win a title. We're doing right by him. Like that. That's the thing. Josh Kroenke, another thing that he doesn't want to overtly say, but clearly he feels is that they're not letting down Nikola Jokic. They are doing everything they can. So any question that can be perceived as you're not doing enough to help out Nikola Jokic, he's trying to turn back on you and say, well, what if he wasn't even here? Again, why are we going to this? Like, almost imagine a world without Nikola Jokic. We brought him up. We're doing everything right by him. We could not have him. And how would you feel about the Denver Nuggets? It's bizarre. And that's the clip that's going viral right now, because people who didn't watch the full press conference are going, what the hell did he just say? You don't even utter those words. You don't even put that thought into the universe. That doesn't exist. That doesn't even cross your mind. Even when you're at the lowest of lows and you feel like there's nowhere to go, you still hang on to Nikola Jokic. You don't think about trading him. But he spoke. You just let it out, put it out into the world, into microphones. By not going into the second apron, they keep Nikola Jokic. Like I'm just trying to pinpoint some of the logic here, or lack thereof, that I heard this afternoon. Staying out of the second apron, not paying Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, allows the Denver Nuggets to keep Nikola Jokic. I don't follow that logic. I don't understand, because there are other players on a basketball team. In fact, every other player on the basketball team, I think, is in some way expendable. Nikola Jokic is not. You don't even talk about that. Especially after everything with Luka. The most incomprehensible trade in the history of basketball. Like, you don't basically volunteer that there would be a scenario in which you would do the same exact thing that the Mavericks did. And again, I can't follow how staying out of the second apron prevents this doomsday scenario from happening. And then there was one more little nugget, no pun intended, that he threw out. He was asked, or all of them on the dais were asked about the contract of Nikola Jokic. He is able to sign an extension this summer. And Josh Kroenke, I don't have the exact audio, but he basically said, you know, we're definitely going to present him with one, but we're going to walk him through all the financial ins and outs of it and be fully transparent like we always are. And it's on him, and then he has to decide what's best for his family. It's too much. It's too much information. Are you going to ask Nikola Jokic to sign the extension this summer? Is it your plans to offer it to him? Yes, of course. Why wouldn't we? But this grand explanation, it almost feels like he's planting the seeds for Nikola Jokic to be the next Denver Nuggets star to ask out. Like, we're going to present him with all of this stuff. We have every intention of doing it. It's on him whether he's going to sign it. He's like putting it on Nikola Jokic. That if Nikola Jokic does what some of us think he should do and not sign it, at least to wait and see what happens, or to light a fire under the Nuggets organization to show his displeasure, well, he may not sign it. Again, like spinning this scenario that Nikola Jokic is not a Denver Nugget anymore. And to do that to what? Curry favor? You think people are going to you think if this goes south and Nikola Jokic demands to be traded or lets his contract run out and sign somewhere else, that anybody is going to side with the Nuggets organization in this divorce? Absolutely not. You have a guy in Nikola Jokic who has been, he hasn't spoken up. He hasn't criticized. He's just gone out there and been the best player in the world. Even when pressed, even when people are asking him to be more like his superstar peers, like Giannis, even in a passive-aggressive way, like go say something to a newspaper that you're contemplating your future. Like, we're asking him to do this stuff, and he still won't do it. You think with everything we've been through, for lack of a better phrase, with Nikola Jokic, that if he ends up on another team that we're blaming anybody but the Nuggets organization? I don't see how that series of events happens. Forget the wrong player gets hurt and the Nuggets are trading Nikola Jokic. I can't see the things that are set in motion, the sequence of events that would make me blame Nikola Jokic for leaving the Denver Nuggets. I don't know. I'm just trying to sift through this. I was caught off guard. I was not expecting this press conference today and some of the things that were said. So I'm reacting almost stream of consciousness. What are you taking away from this? Whether it's comments about trading Jokic, whether it's how this front office is going to work, 719-247-1313. Happy birthday, America. Celebrate big with a chance at $5,000 in the Red, White, and Win giveaway. Throw a big block party, take an amazing summer vacation, or celebrate however you wish. Just head to extrasports1300.com now to enter this national contest for your chance to Red, White, and Win $5,000, sponsored locally by H&H Tires and Window Nation. The audio I was referring to, the quote I was referring to with Josh Kroenke, I pretty much nailed it, but good radio is actually bringing you the audio. So here's Josh Kroenke. Again, the question just was, do you intend to offer an extension to Nikola Jokic, and do you expect him to sign it? Here's Josh Kroenke. Hey, let me hear that one more time. One more time. What are these financial parameters? What are these parameters that are going to be in place that Nikola Jokic might block? Are they going to try and get him to take a hometown discount? Is Josh Kroenke trying to put it on Nikola Jokic that part of the reason that why the Nuggets can't improve their basketball team is because they're paying him so much money? I'm going to have to read up on what the financial parameters, what the differences between signing this summer and signing later. Are the Nuggets, the only thing I can think of is that the Nuggets are trying to create more flexibility by getting Nikola Jokic, either him to sign it now or him to sign it later. Like, I can't quite understand what is better for the Nuggets. Explain to him the financial parameters. I mean, it was almost like intimating in a way that, even though he said, I don't know if he's going to sign it, it was almost like, I don't know if he's going to, like almost a doubtful tone to what he's saying because of some of these financial parameters. And I'm sure someone on the Nuggets beat went on to that and is going to look into this stuff. Maybe we'll even have somebody be able to explain it on social media uh, before this show is up. But that was another very curious way of putting things. Like, you could have just left it at, we're going to offer it to him. Maybe even, took it up a little bit because we have every intention of Nikola Jokic finishing his career with the Denver Nuggets, and he is worth every penny. If you want to, you don't have to throw in that flower. It's not like Jokic is listening. He's halfway around the world riding a horse right now. But at least say we have every intention to, and we hope he does. But ultimately, he will do it for the first team. Even if you just said that, it's like, okay, like that's what it always is, right? All these players are always acting in the best interest of their team. Like, we did that. You don't even really have to add it in. Just say we hope he signs it. Like, it leads you to wonder, what is Josh Kroenke thinking, or what does he know that we don't? Maybe it's just as simple as there's some financial parameter in there that we're not even fully aware of that is a big difference maker. Or maybe everything we're saying about we gotta believe Nikola Jokic is frustrated. Maybe behind the scenes, he's getting a real sense that Nikola Jokic is getting fed up. And again, almost laying the groundwork of one, a Nuggets reality without Nikola Jokic, but also two, trying to plant the seed in people's minds that somehow Nikola Jokic is going to end up being the bad guy. And by the way, it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be any bad guys here. You can just try your best to help out Nikola Jokic, and Nikola Jokic can go ahead and win another ring. And I think that I really think it's fun. I do. Maybe you have higher expectations. I think Michael Malone did the entire organization a huge disservice by saying what he said right after winning an NBA title, that they were going to become the San Antonio. They were become the next goal was to be a dynasty. I think he should have known better, and I think even people today who are talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder have serious doubts of whether the Thunder are going to become a dynasty. And in fact, I said yesterday they have a good chance of winning another one, which I believe. As of right now, who's knocking off OKC? With the obvious caveat of if Shea were to have something happen to him like Tatum or Halliburton or Damian Lillard, then okay. Like health is always a factor. But I'm saying what team as currently constructed is going to take down Oklahoma City as currently constructed. But even then, when I say that, I'm not talking about not 4, not 5, not 6 for Oklahoma City. I'm saying they got a good chance to win another one. And when I look at the Denver Nuggets, that's what I'm saying. Like Nikola Jokic should have multiple rings. I don't know that a successful endeavor would be that Nikola Jokic has to win 5 rings. Just another one. I don't think that's everything to ask. But if they get that one, there are no bad guys. We'll continue on with reaction to Josh Kroenke's press conference today. We'll bring in your thoughts as well on all of this. We kind of have two topics running right now. We have the front office and the decisions that have been made, and I want to get into that next. And then there's the Nikola Jokic of it all that was dragged into this press conference in a really weird way by Josh Kroenke. But more drive time sports after this. Welcome in. Reacting to a very interesting press conference this afternoon from Josh Kroenke, the governor of the Denver Nuggets, introducing his new two-headed front office of John Wallace and Ben Tenzer. It was a much wilder ride than I expected it to be. We will continue to talk about it, and I will continue to take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Speaking of, let's go to a text right now that I can use as a great jumping off point because I think that this is a valid conversation. This from Eric. The Nuggets' last three general managers have been pretty good. Two of them won Executive of the Year, and the other brought in the missing pieces to win a championship. I'd give them the benefit of the doubt. Well, let's go with that premise because you obviously are speaking facts, Eric, when it comes to their past history. The two pushbacks that I would have. One, at some point, the apple is falling too far from the tree. Right? If it's, Tim Connolly was brought in from the outside, but if you go from Tim Connolly to his underling, which was Calvin Booth, and now you're going to further down the organizational flow chart to get at least to Ben Tenzer, and then you're dipping back into your past, bringing back John Wallace, who served under Tim Connolly in Denver. So I think that it is reasonable to question at what point does the talent well dry up with the Denver Nuggets? Do they have limitless general managers? Just an office full of capable GMs? I think that might be a stretch, and that's one of the questions I have. Is that at some point, wouldn't you think that going outside the organization and poaching somebody who has either done the job before or is the very top lieutenant in another organization, wouldn't that be a good course of action instead of constantly promoting from within? At some point, that well dries up, I believe. Second, Calvin Booth did bring in Bruce Brown and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And then he proceeded to make a comedy of errors with almost every movie made after that. Are we saying that Calvin Booth was a good general manager? Because it will help answer my first question. Okay, I get the Michael Malone, Calvin Booth. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about looking at Calvin Booth's track record. Okay, he brought in KCP. He also allowed KCP to go. Or at least that has to be put on him to some extent. I do think it's ultimately the decision came from above and not wanting to go in the second apron. But I got to imagine that Calvin Booth somewhat saw the vision, somewhat agreed with it. But ultimately, it falls on him that they let KCP go. Bruce Brown, I think, is a special case because the Nuggets legitimately could not pay him that money and keep the rest of the team together. So extend them a little bit of grace when it comes to that. But he also brought in Reggie Jackson, who they had to jettison and give up second round picks, draft capital in order to move on from him. He brought in Dario Saric, who is now an albatross around the neck of the Denver Nuggets. He signed, not only did he draft Zeke Naji, he signed Zeke Naji to another terrible contract. And then they had Russell Westbrook, mixed results. Overall, I would say pretty good. But now you don't have him anymore. You were unable to retain him. Maybe that's on him. Maybe it's not. And how sold are you on the Peyton Watson and Julian Strothers of the world? So if you think Calvin Booth, the only reason he got let go and the only reason he shouldn't have continued as the general manager of the Denver Nuggets is because he didn't get along with Michael Malone, I don't think that's the whole story. I think that's what ultimately pushed Josh Kroenke to make that decision. But how can you look at the decisions that the Denver Nuggets have made after winning a title? Have any really worked out? I think you would question that. So if Calvin Booth had his own weaknesses just as a general manager, forgetting his interpersonal communication with the head coach of the team, if there were other reasons there, then wouldn't that be a signal that maybe you've reached the end of the line when it comes to being able to promote from within? Like, we promoted this guy from within, it didn't work. Maybe that's kind of the end of the line. So there would be that. But also here, I think we have to look at the Denver Nuggets where they are. Okay? They brought in Tim Connolly as a very almost no risk and decently high reward, right? Did we know that Tim Connolly would be as good at his job as he became? Probably not. But he was a first-time general manager. The ESPN article that came out shortly thereafter that people didn't even take the guy seriously. But the Nuggets could take that swing, or whatever you want to call it, make that decision, because remember where the Nuggets were at that point. They were at a really down spot. And when you are when your organization is down, that's when maybe you take a swing. Maybe you take a leap of faith on someone's potential. The issue with this promotion in bringing in John Wallace, again, two guys who have never held a job that this high in the organization, is that right now the Nuggets championship window is closing. If it's not already closed. I mean, that could be the reality here. But where they're at right now with the best player in the world, a 3-time MVP, and a Western Conference that keeps getting better, and they're not. I would argue that this point in Nuggets history is not the time to bet on potential. And that's why I threw out Bob Myers initially when Calvin Booth was let go. I thought that bringing in somebody, the best case scenario would be to bring in somebody that had done the job before, and not only done the job before, but help usher in a dynasty. Not even setting that as the expectation for the Denver Nuggets. I'm just saying Bob Myers' resume is pretty good. So I thought in this moment, at this juncture of where the Denver Nuggets are in their franchise's history, that maybe betting on upside, especially with what these opposing forces that the Denver Nuggets are dealing with when it comes to the second apron, and the fact that they just inked Jamal Murray to a massive contract extension, and Christian Brown said to all of these things that are going on, I think the best course of action for the Denver Nuggets would be to have a more seasoned hand on the wheel, so to speak. So, yes, Josh Kroenke has made some very good decisions. He also hired Brian Shaw. Right? So the guy's not infallible. More good than bad, absolutely. But he's not infallible. And I just think they went too far down in the organizational flow chart. And just the idea that it's a co-general manager. Like, this doesn't exist elsewhere. Sam Presti is in charge of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I don't even know anybody else in the OKC front office. It's Sam Presti. Even Indiana has a clear delineation of duties. They have a president of basketball operations, and the Nuggets used to be built this way. They had a president of basketball operations, and then they have Chad Buchanan, who is the general manager. He's the lieutenant to Kevin Pritchard in Indiana, if we're just looking at the two teams that went to the NBA Finals. The Nuggets did not really look to the outside. They brought back one of their own in John Wallace. Then they went very deep in the organizational flow chart for Ben Tenzer. And then they set them up in a very, I'll use the reporter who asked the initial question about, this setup, abnormal. Like, there are just a lot of things here that I look at and I say, there are just too many things that I don't like about this. But Josh Kroenke has made good decisions before, and we'll find out. Like, that's the biggest thing here. We're all going to find out together. And I laid out yesterday what Ben Tenzer and John Wallace could do immediately. Undo some of the damage that Calvin Booth did. Or do something that we're not expecting. End up with the draft pick tomorrow night. That would be one thing. Right? Find your way back into the draft. That'd be like, okay, these guys can make a little bit happen here. Now, it's not earth-shattering. It's not ultimately changing the trajectory of the Denver Nuggets forever, but it's something. Or better yet, do something to move on from Dario Saric and Zeke Naji. Again, not going to bring the Nuggets their next title, but at least it shows that these guys are capable of conducting NBA business at this level. I should say, because they've both held positions within NBA organizations. I don't want to make it seem like they did an American Idol style competition, who wants to be the Nuggets GM, and took people in off the street. So I do want to extend Tenzer and John Wallace that level of respect, that at least they've been in NBA front offices, but they haven't been in the big chair. And Ben Tenzer was the interim GM. I don't know what it was that he did. And he didn't really even discuss it today either. Somebody asked him what he did while he was the interim GM, and he said, support the coaching staff. What does that even mean? I don't think he did anything. Maybe sat in on some scouting, but he was unable or unwilling to discuss anything that he did when he was the interim general manager. So I think it's understandable that people would wonder, like, can these guys do the job? And then above that comes the organizational structure that Josh Kroenke has now built. So we have both of these things that I think are questionable. But a lot of the stuff from Tenzer and Wallace was very much just parroting earlier talking points from Josh Kroenke about being about synergy and relationships and supporting each other, and disagreements are okay and all of this kind of stuff. It just reinforces what I've been saying and why I said that Ben Tenzer was going to get this job. Well, I guess I was half right. Is that Josh Kroenke doesn't think that the Denver Nuggets are essentially broken. In fact, here's John Wallace when asked what the Denver Nuggets need to get back on top of the NBA world.
Well, I think Josh hit on it already, where we have to be really conscious of the margins. We've got to be very deliberate, and obviously the time is now. With Joker, it's obviously a generational talent, and how he helps out and how he elevates the level of play of so many people around him. We've got to make sure that, we find some more shooting, obviously address some of the defensive concerns. But I think we have both young individuals here that can step up and do that as we continue to develop them, as well as, we'll look outside and see what makes sense.
About the most concrete thing that came across today: shooting, defensive help. Okay, now we know what the Denver Nuggets are looking for. But even in that same sentence, John Wallace went back to the young guys. That defense could be Peyton Watson. Shooting could be Julian Strawther. But again, isn't that David Adelman and his staff? Like, if these guys end up working, doesn't the credit go to them? So what is it that John Wallace and Ben Tenzer are going to do to help the Denver Nuggets? They weren't going to do anything today. I understand that. That's what now essentially the offseason is already underway. We've had a flurry of trades. But this offseason is the proving ground. What David Adelman had in the playoffs is now what Ben Tenzer and John Wallace have, even though they already have the gig. That's how it's different. But these are the first impressions for you. Right? You saw David Adelman before he got the full-time head coaching gig and got an idea of what he was all about. You don't have that with the two-headed front office. But they already have the job. Now it's, why did Josh Kroenke ultimately hire you guys? That's what this offseason will be for. And I don't know if it's just betting on Julian Strawther and Deron Holmes that is going to make people believe in what Josh Kroenke has built in his front office. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Pro rodeo champions from the U.S. and Canadian circuits, plus national champions from Mexico, are coming to Colorado Springs July 8th through the 12th for the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo. And with payouts over $1 million, the competition will be fierce. Get your tickets to the NFR Open at the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo at pikespeakorbust.org. More of your thoughts and reaction to Josh Kroenke, Ben Tenzer, and John Wallace today as they, as a trio running the Denver Nuggets, met the media today. This coming in, if you watch the show on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, I believe you have the ability to comment on all of those platforms, and I can do this fancy thing like I'm doing for Keaton's comment. I can show it on the broadcast. Keaton says, Josh's media skills are embarrassing, truly. And what's weird about it, and I started the show this way, like I don't normally feel that way. I don't normally feel like Josh Kroenke has a difficult job or a difficult time, I should say, getting his point across. We can disagree with his assertions, but like these little cryptic things about Nikola Jokic and really not being able to fully, I think, explain how it's going to work between John Wallace and Ben Tenzer. I just think he came up very short today in getting people to buy in. But if internally everyone's okay with it, we have to acknowledge that that is the most important thing. You and I can feel some kind of way about all of this, but as long as, you know, the most important other people in the Nuggets organization are on board with this, then that's what truly matters. Here's Josh Kroenke on whether David Adelman or Nikola Jokic, just to name a couple of people, gave this idea the thumbs up.
You know, I think I knew where most everybody in the organization stood, just not speaking to job responsibilities, but where they stood with both these guys personally. I think they're two unbelievable human beings that have no ego. And so, you know, we'll start there for sure. They also have incredible skill sets. So to answer your question about DA and Yoke, I think, one, they know these guys as people, but they also know their skill sets. And I think that they're both really excited to have them in the roles that they're going to be in moving forward, both personally and professionally.
I don't think the question here, I mean, I understand why he goes to it, but the question here isn't, are these bad people? Right? I mean, Josh Kroenke, I think he does need to get one more dig in on Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. Like, these guys don't have an ego, and I was dealing with two guys whose egos were running amok, and I had to put a stop to it. I think we all understand how egos that are overblown can negatively impact a franchise. But I think when you're making these hires, these are all first-timers. David Adelman, Ben Tenzer, John Wallace, they're all first-timers. I think your time is better spent explaining what skill sets in particular they have that will make them uniquely qualified to navigate what is going on in today's NBA and try to take a pretty much a finished roster. I'm not saying finished as in a championship roster, but I'm saying a roster that has had pretty much every dollar accounted for, how you maneuver. Because I think that's what Ben Tenzer's job is. Right? I think Ben Tenzer's job is to understand this second apron reality and figure out the little intricacies of it that the Denver Nuggets can try to exploit. But I can only think that because it was never specifically said by Josh Kroenke as a reason why Ben Tenzer is the general manager. It kept going back to no egos, great people, and I have zero doubt that John Wallace and Ben Tenzer are truly salt of the earth individuals. And everyone will love everybody in the Denver Nuggets front office. I understand that was an issue. But you fixed that issue. You got rid of the big egos. Now we need practical experience, practical skills to face what is actually the bigger hindrance with this Denver Nuggets team, is that they have overcommitted to so many players on their roster that they can't maneuver their way out of it. They have put themselves in a straitjacket. And mind you, don't forget the number of commitments the Denver Nuggets have made after they won a title. If all of this second apron stuff came into play right after the Denver Nuggets won a title, they ended up signing Jamal Murray to an extension that's going to pay him $45 million a year. They made that decision. They made the decision under these financial rules to bring in Dario Saric. To say nothing of whether you believe that the draft picks they made sense are going to work. So they've continued to tighten up the straitjacket, if you will. And that's why I say Josh Kroenke can't keep bringing up the second apron anymore, because they have done things willfully and intentionally to put them up against it. Now, they've done things like letting KCP go to stay out of it, but they've done other things to put themselves right up against it. They've walked that tightrope, and they're clearly comfortable with the tightrope they are walking. So don't lament anymore the financial rules that you were built under, because you have continued to double down on this roster and your vision even after all of these financial rules have been put into place. But for me, as I'm looking at what the Denver Nuggets need, and I start with, I know depth. I'm with that idea, but I worry about Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. as viable second and third options on a championship team now. We are getting further removed from when we saw the best of Jamal Murray. There are more postseasons in which you have been either disappointed by Jamal Murray or you haven't seen him at all. Then when he's been really good, you have the bubble and you have the title year, but you have the two postseasons he missed because of the ACL injury, and you've had the two postseasons since they won a title where I don't think they got the most out of Jamal Murray for whatever reason, health or just flat out performance. And when I talk about Jamal Murray, it's both of those things wrapped up into it. I don't know that you can put Jamal Murray, if he can't be an all-star playing next to Nikola Jokic, I don't really know what NBA city he can go to and become one. Right? So I get the fit with Nikola Jokic. He is a fit with Nikola Jokic. But the idea that he alone is the super high-level player, I have my doubts, but wrapped up into that is also the health concerns. And with Porter, it's almost exclusively health. Maybe a little bit of, hey, even when the Nuggets won a title, your production kind of tapered off as the postseason went on. But I can accept that to a certain degree, understanding that Michael Porter is not the most important or the second most important player on the Denver Nuggets even. But I understand why there are questions about him. I have questions about both of those guys, and those might actually be the two most difficult players to move. So what can Ben Tenzer do? What intimate knowledge does he have that would allow the Nuggets to extricate themselves? And I'm saying that knowing full well they don't want to. Michael Porter, in a way, takes care of himself because in a couple years he's going to be out of contract. But with Jamal Murray, they've doubled down. They don't want to get rid of Jamal Murray. Or they can't. Either way. But today, the previous press conferences, when he fired Michael Malone, when he met with the media after the season was over, when he named David Adelman, and even when he named David Adelman the head coach, I think it was more appropriate to talk about what David Adelman did while he was the interim head coach that made him qualified to become the full-time head coach. And I think there was quite a bit of that, actually. But the time for, we need better vibes in here and we need people without egos, that was before. That was the justification for firing Michael Malone and Calvin Booth in part, and I get that. But now what people are questioning is not the egos of Ben Tenzer and John Wallace. Why in the world would Ben Tenzer and John Wallace, who have never held the highest ranking position in a basketball NBA organization in their lives, have a huge ego? Calvin Booth was brought on because he put the finishing touches on a championship team. Michael Malone's was because he coached the Denver Nuggets to a title. I think we can all expect Ben Tenzer and John Wallace to be largely egoless front office executives. But now we need to have it explained to us what they bring to the table that is going to allow you to turn things around here. Not turning around like the Nuggets are a terrible team and they need to be good again, but the idea that I talked about yesterday in the wake of the Kevin Durant deal, that you have another team that's pointing their arrow up with the Rockets acquiring Kevin Durant, after the Lakers acquired Luka, after OKC and Minnesota have surpassed the Denver Nuggets. What are the Nuggets going to do as their arrow's pointing down? How are they going to get it to point back up again? And I think today that kind of conversation would have been more helpful than, everybody loves everybody in the Nuggets organization again. And I don't mean to completely diminish that, because a toxic work environment, and if you've been a part of one, you know this, not a lot of work gets done. No, people aren't performing to the best of their ability. I get all that, but the time has passed for that to be the main topic of conversation. Now it's, what are you going to do? You're not going to relationship Michael Porter to health. You're not going to relationship Giannis onto the Denver Nuggets. Right? There has to be some practical skills at play here, and I didn't hear a lot about the skills that these two gentlemen have. So we wait for the offseason to really begin to see these skill sets come to light, because they certainly weren't touted by Josh Kroenke. It's very general. They have skills. What kind of skills? A particular set of skills. What are they? Relationships. 719-247-1313. Your chance to win tickets to the U.S. Senior Open coming up next. The 45th U.S. Senior Open back at the Broadmoor. Get your tickets to see the legends of the game compete this week, June 26th through the 29th at ussenioropen.com. Or if you're like, I want to go and I really want to go Saturday. Oh, you have come to the right place, my friend. I have a pair of tickets to Saturday's round, moving day at the Broadmoor. If you would like to go, just text golf in your name to 719-247-1313. That's golf in your name to 247-1313. The 13th texter to do it will win a pair of tickets for Saturday's round at the U.S. Senior Open. I just saw they released the tee times. I'll get more into this tomorrow because I don't want to deviate too much from the big conversation today, which is the Denver Nuggets. But a couple that I highlighted, best groups, there are stars throughout the field. Rocco Mediate, Miguel Angel Jimenez, who I'm really high on this week, Vijay Singh, Bernard Longer. But a couple of the great groups, obviously for the weekend, they'll be reconfigured. But for Thursday and Friday, you have Patty Harrington, Justin Leonard, and Stuart Sink teeing off at 1:43 on Thursday. That will be a really good group to watch the first 2 days. And then another group, Ernie Els, Angel Cabrera, and Retief Goosen will be in a group together. They're teeing off at just after 2 o'clock on Thursday. So there are a couple really, those are probably the two best groups for my money. But again, so many big names in golf competing at the Broadmoor. So we'll get more into that tomorrow. Jay Ritchie's going to drop by from Tee to Green Radio, and we'll preview the tournament this weekend, and then I'll be doing the show out there both on Thursday and Friday. Let's get back to your thoughts on the press conference today and also the bigger thing, the decision to co-GM this thing from you. From the 719, Nuggets do not win another title as constructed. Nuggets need a general manager with a past history of winning. Murray and Porter reached their ceiling and have been coming down and need to be traded a year early rather than a year late. I'm a Kings fan. They are a stupid organization, so maybe go after DeRozan and Keegan Murray in a trade and offload Porter and Jamal. That's good insight into the Kings. But everything you said there, I mean, I agree with. I don't think this team wins another title as currently constructed. I don't. Do I think that they need to completely remake themselves and get rid of Murray and Porter? And I think one might bring the change needed. And I've continued to put up Jamal Murray. Right? You're going to gain some flexibility when Michael Porter's contract is up in a couple of years. And he's not the second most important player on your team. Jamal Murray is. So if the Nuggets want to make real change, I think they got to look at moving Jamal Murray. But I agree. I don't think that they can win as currently constructed unless one of these young players hits in a massive way. Not even a Christian Brown way. Like bigger than that. And that's another issue in and of itself is what they do with Christian Brown, because I can't even fathom what I'm going to be like on the air when Christian Brown gets handed a $30 million a year extension. I'm going to pass out because the Nuggets will again just keep doubling down on this way of roster construction and overvaluing their own players, and while at the same time lamenting that they were built under a different financial set of rules. I would agree with the assertion that the Nuggets need a GM with a past history of winning. Now that list is probably small. And I would love for someone to bring Bob Myers onto their podcast and ask him about the Nuggets job. Like, now that they've hired people, and I know you're not going to get a straight out answer, but I would just love to understand if there was any lack of interest from Bob Myers' side. Because listening to Josh Kroenke today and the clip I played in the last segment about no egos, that these guys don't have egos. I'll play it for you again.
You know, I think I knew where most everybody in the organization stood, just not speaking to job responsibilities, but where they stood with both these guys personally. I think they're two unbelievable human beings that have no ego, and so, you know, we'll start there for sure. They also have incredible skill sets.
No ego. I can't help but think that's a little bit of a critique, to put it mildly, of both Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. But I also think that maybe it would be a reason why Josh Kroenke wouldn't want to bring in a Bob Myers. And I know Bob Myers has become ubiquitous because we can't really think of another GM that's out of work. You know, some have been, promoted. You would have to poach from the front office, and look how well that's gone for the Knicks when it comes to coaches. But like Bob Myers, a guy like him, it feels like that's also Josh Kroenke saying, if I brought in that guy, he would have an ego. Yes, he would, because he built a dynasty. But wouldn't he have some necessary skills and experience to help? Like, I understand that ego can be, destructive, but we all have ego, and some people's ego is justified. But it can run amok. I understand that. When he uses the word ego, really, you could substitute control. Like, if he is talking about a more experienced GM, a Bob Myers, for instance, when he says the word ego, like, these guys don't have ego, these guys don't want control. Bob Myers would want control. Bob Myers would, in the nicest way possible, tell Josh Kroenke, I got this. You go away. Again, in the nicest way possible. But that's what Bob Myers would want. That's what, maybe even Tim Connolly, if they were trying to poach him from the Minnesota Timberwolves and bring him back, maybe he would be like, I can't have you over my shoulder. I have gone somewhere else, and I've built up the Wolves. If you're bringing me back, you're bringing me back to have control of the organization, complete control. And I think that Josh Kroenke, because he felt like he lost so much control along the way with Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, now he's overcompensating, and he himself is taking full control. So I say that because it feels to me like the Denver Nuggets weren't interested in a Bob Myers. That if somehow what David Adelman did wasn't good enough to become the full-time head coach, they wouldn't want to bring in a coach that was proven somewhere else. Because of ego, because of wanting control. And I don't think that's necessarily the right way to think. Because I think, just like the texter does, that a general manager with experience would bring the necessary skills, maybe a little bit of an ego along with it, but the necessary skills to help the Denver Nuggets improve their team. But it sounds to me like Josh Kroenke wanted no part of somebody with previous experience. That he didn't want to go and bring Bob Myers off the ESPN set or poach Tim Connolly from the Minnesota Timberwolves. It doesn't feel that way to me. What I would be curious to hear is whether a Bob Myers, and you'll never hear from Tim Connolly because he's obviously employed by the Wolves, but would they have been interested? And if Bob Myers goes on to, the Hoops Collective podcast and says, no, I'm happy with, I wouldn't have wanted the Nuggets job, then okay, maybe they did reach out. But it seems like this is Josh Kroenke making a conscious decision that I don't want to experience because I don't want to relinquish control, because I did that with Booth and Malone and it bit me. And to me, that's a little bit of an overreaction. Right? Like, I know things got pretty bad, but it went well for a while. So I don't think it's the worst thing that Josh Kroenke would cede control of the team. It's just maybe he didn't, when he saw some trouble signs, he didn't step in. But I don't think he wanted an experienced general manager. That's one of my many takeaways from this today. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. On a different note, if you're a man of a certain age and you're looking into testosterone replacement therapy, maybe, and you've been struggling, where do you go to do that? Well, you can look no further than Synergen X and Low T Center. The new Synergen X health app is a superior innovation in healthcare technology that you won't find anywhere else. Just another thing, because I've been telling you about how Low T Center, and that's where you should go. Now, here's just another reason. With the app, you can book appointments, view lab results, have face-to-face telehealth visits, receive medication reminders, order supplements, pre-check into visits, and more. That's just more of Low T's promise to allow you to take control of your health, and it has never been easier. So find out what Synergen X and the app is all about by going to fixmylowt.com. That's fixmylowt.com. Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app that is free to download and free to listen, by the by, or you're watching the show and hopefully also listening, because I don't want to understand the reason to watch the show with no sound, on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. If you would like to participate in the show, we welcome that. We encourage that. The number to call or text is 719-247-1313. And that number could also be your way to win tickets to tomorrow night's Switchbacks match. That's coming up. Speaking of winning, congrats to Monty, who won a pair of tickets to see the U.S. Senior Open on Saturday at the Broadmoor. More tickets to give away tomorrow as well before the tournament starts on Thursday. Right now, though, let's hit the three stories that are driving the show, and it's really three spin-offs of one big story, which is the introductory press conference of the two-headed GM for the Denver Nuggets. All right, there is a lot to get into, a lot to digest today from not even an hour-long press conference at Ball Arena. Let's start with Josh Kroenke's ideas on why he wants to reinvent the wheel when it comes to an NBA front office.
Most everything that has got us to this point has been unorthodox. We've hired first-time guys before. And our best player is the 41st pick in a very unorthodox manner, the way he plays the game. So everything about us is unorthodox. I think from a process standpoint, I think it was important for us as an organization and myself and my father to really slow down, take stock of what the organization really needed at this point in time. Talk to a lot of different people from a lot of different areas and gain a lot of different perspective, both in the basketball world and out of the basketball world. And really kind of nailing down what the Denver Nuggets need, and that's the margins on the outside of our roster. And I think that both John and Ben complementary skill sets are really going to help us address those things in a creative way moving forward.
So, to follow Josh Kroenke's logic here, Ben Tenzer is the salary cap guy. Right? He's going to figure out the little ins and outs of this second apron world that the Denver Nuggets live in to try and figure out how to free up money, how to make trades, all of that kind of stuff. He's the cap guy. John Wallace is the player development guy. He is the guy with an eye for talent, especially in the draft, because the Denver Nuggets are fully invested in what Calvin Booth laid out as the vision, which is we're going to take our core and we're going to leave our core alone, and we're just going to keep supplementing it with players that we get through the draft. Not this draft, mind you, because they gave up all their draft capital, but next year and beyond. That's essentially the way, the roles that these two are taking on. The questions, and that's my big takeaway from this press conference, there are still more questions than answers about how this is all going to work. But what about somebody, so you can tell me if you can, let's use the Kevin Durant trade that went down on Sunday. So Ben Tenzer would be the guy to figure out what contracts the Denver Nuggets could move in order to make the finances work based on the second apron. Okay? And then John Wallace would be able, because he scouted some of the younger players, but you're just bringing in Kevin Durant, so I don't know if John Wallace is too needed in that kind of a trade. But ultimately, who's picking up the phone to Phoenix and saying we will offer A, B, and C? right? So you got your cap guy, you got your top scout guy, your player development guy. I get that. You need those in a front office, but why are they co-holding the highest place in a front office? Like other organizations have guys that do what John Wallace and Ben Tenzer do that are work behind the scenes. Why are these guys going to become the faces of the organization? And how are you going to break a tie? If Ben Tenzer feels some way about somebody and John Wallace feels another way, who's breaking the tie? Inevitably, it all goes to Josh Kroenke. So he can have these co-GMs because they actually don't wield that much power right now in the Nuggets organization. I don't know if he had to give them both promotions and fancy titles in order to secure their services, but it's very clear that Josh Kroenke has the final say in everything that the Denver Nuggets are going to do for the foreseeable future. But it is still, to use Josh Kroenke's word, an unorthodox way of doing things. And my biggest question out of all of this is trying to reinvent the way that front offices in the NBA operate. Is this really the time to do that? Okay, you got a lot of issues, right? You got a lot of issues. You've been bouncing the second round back-to-back years now. You have not developed your young players. You are in salary cap prison. You have teams around you in the West that are getting better, and you're not getting better. Like, there's enough going on with this roster right now that I don't know that tinkering and experimenting and trying to do it a different way to do the Steve Jobs think differently thing is really the time to do it. I feel like if you're a team like, say, I don't know, because they came up earlier on in the show, the Sacramento Kings. Maybe they're not a great Charlotte Hornets. How about them? You can think differently. You can try to do some crazy stuff. You know why? Because you're not in the middle of a championship window. I think a boring but sensical hire of a grizzled veteran front office executive and just make him the boss would be the more appropriate move at this juncture. And I just feel like you're inviting more variables into an organization that already has so many of them that they have yet to figure out. And now you got to figure out the power dynamics. You got to figure out what exactly it is that Ben Tenzer and John Wallace do, because I can say that they have the roles I said they have. I don't know because it wasn't explained very well. Napoleon Dynamite ran down a better, more specific list of skills. Bow hunting skills. We don't know any of the skills. I'm just doing my own research and figuring out what these guys are doing. And that's another big takeaway of this. I don't think Josh Kroenke sold this whole idea well at all. And he needed to sell this thing. I didn't come away with a lot of confidence that this is going to work. Let's go to the other piece of this press conference today that was even more bizarre. A question about the second apron acting as a hard salary cap. Here's Josh Kroenke.
There was a lot of conversations last summer about KCP and us re-signing him and around the second apron. And we never really got any pointed questions about that, or at least I didn't. And it was a fascinating one because we really did every exercise looking through retaining him and what that meant under the new rules. And, you know, I think that for us as an organization, going into that second apron is not necessarily something that we're scared of. I think that there are rules around it that we needed to be very careful of with our injury history. The wrong person gets injured, and very quickly you're into a scenario where that I never want to have to contemplate, and that's trading number 15.
As if the vibes around the Denver Nuggets could not get worse, Josh Kroenke, unprompted, unsolicited, spoke into the world the idea that there would be a scenario in which the Denver Nuggets would tell the Dallas Mavericks, hold my beer, we're trading Nikola Jokic. That's what Josh Kroenke said. For you and I, the idea of trading Nikola Jokic is completely preposterous. For him, all it takes is one injury to the wrong player. Which, as I said earlier, we need to find out who this wrong player is, and we need to protect him with our lives. Like the idea that you're going to say that there is a cause and effect here, almost, did you follow the logic? It went through, if we would have signed KCP, we could have ended up trading Nikola Jokic. That's where we got. It was a long answer, but I wanted to play the whole thing to highlight how he went from, he legitimately said the reason why we didn't re-sign Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is because if an injury happened, we would have to trade Nikola Jokic, which I don't buy. I don't, because there are a lot of other players on this Nuggets roster that you could buy out. There's a thing called the stretch provision that you could essentially buy out players. You could dump Jamal Murray. You could dump Michael Porter Jr. You could trade Christian Brown. You could get rid of Aaron Gordon. Any of these are better options than trading Nikola Jokic. He basically offered up the nuclear option as the thing at the top of his mind. And that really has become the bigger story. Most people throughout the afternoon don't care anymore about how the Denver Nuggets are going to be run. They want to know why Josh Kroenke, unprompted, is entertaining in some way, or has entertained the idea that they would have to trade Nikola Jokic. And I think he's weaponizing Nikola Jokic against people. I think what that is him pushing back against the notion that the Denver Nuggets are letting Nikola Jokic down. That they're not doing all they can to help Nikola Jokic. So Josh Kroenke, and I don't know how that wasn't purposeful. You don't just let it slip out, oh, we might have to trade Nikola Jokic. I think what he's doing is he's using that to say, we are actually doing everything we can to help Nikola Jokic, because if we do all this stuff that you guys think we should do, like, for instance, signing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, we would have to trade Nikola Jokic, and the blood would be on your hands. That's the best I can come up with on why Josh Kroenke would say that. Because he's tired of the narrative that it's Jokic versus the Nuggets, that the Nuggets aren't doing what they can to help him. And they're saying, if we do the things that you think that we need to do to help Nikola Jokic, he would not be here anymore. Which is a leap of a thought that I had a very difficult time following that logic. Like, there are so many assumptions that have to be made between point A and point B. But it started with Josh Kroenke not being able to fully intimate and talk about why he's doing what he's doing. And then it ended with people wondering if the Denver Nuggets are seriously contemplating trading Nikola Jokic. Or at least would there be a scenario in which they would, which you got your answer today. Yes, if the wrong player gets hurt. I would argue that outside of Aaron Gordon, everyone on the Nuggets is the wrong player. But I don't think we mean wrong player in the same way. Just, it was bizarre. It was bizarre, and there were no concrete things brought up to make you feel any better. That's the biggest thing. I don't know how you listen to that press conference and you feel any better about the Denver Nuggets moving forward. I think you have to feel worse. I think Josh Kroenke did more damage today to the psyche of Nuggets Nation than he did to calm down what's being talked about. And I got to imagine that was job one, not to do that. Put people's mind at ease, sell this idea. And he ended up bringing up the scenario in which they would trade Nikola Jokic. Just stunning. 719-247-1313. But in times like these, it does help to have your own media wing that will be more friendly to you, that will allow you to have a second chance at it. And the Kroenke media arm did do that and see if the answer Josh Kroenke gave to the relationship between Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets organization makes you feel any better. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Happy birthday, America. Celebrate big with the chance at $5,000 in the Red, White, and Win giveaway. Throw a big block party, take an amazing summer vacation, or celebrate however you wish. Head to extrasports1300.com now to enter this national contest for your chance to Red, White, and Win. $5,000 sponsored locally by H&H Tires and Window Nation. So the story of the day was going to be Josh Kroenke trying to sell you on the idea that this dual GM co-manager thing is what the Denver Nuggets need. And now the story moving forward is going to be the very real scenario in which the Denver Nuggets trade Nikola Jokic. After the press conference, Josh Kroenke was interviewed by Altitude. This is where owning your own media company helps out a little bit, because they will give him an opportunity to explain it and to say, Nikola Jokic, he's not going anywhere, and explain why in the world he said what he said. Here's Josh Kroenke trying to sell you on the idea that everything is hunky-dory between Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. Nikola Jokic, once Michael Malone got fired, went like Thanos to the Infinity Gauntlet and said, I'm going to do this myself. Nowhere in that answer did I get anything to where he loves being in Denver. We love having him. Like, why does it seem like Josh Kroenke is hedging? Doesn't it seem like that? The comment he made about the extension. Oh, we're going to put it in front of him, but the financial parameters, we don't know if he's going to sign it. Wait, what? That's a softball question. Yes, we're going to offer it, and we believe he'll sign it. There's no harm in saying that. Well, the financial parameters. And if the wrong player gets hurt and we're in the second apron, we got to trade him. And because Nikola Jokic felt like he had to take more upon himself in order to help out the Denver Nuggets when they fired their head coach with 3 games left in the regular season, this is all things that why Nikola Jokic is happy with the Denver Nuggets. One word that I did not hear at all today was championship. Maybe I missed it. Not championship. It seems odd the way that Josh Kroenke, who has spoken in front of the media many times, I don't think he does it in LA ever with the Rams, but he's sat up there answering questions from Avs reporters, from Nuggets reporters, and heaven help anybody that has to face London media when the soccer club of record is struggling. And he sat up there and answered questions about Arsenal. He's not new to this. And I can't help but think of a lot of the stuff that he said was intentional. And I wonder what these kind of comments regarding Nikola Jokic are, and in where I land is hedging. That maybe us speculating that Nikola Jokic may not be so unwilling to be engaged with the Denver Nuggets front office and, this, it's above my pay grade stuff. Maybe our thought behind the scenes that he's growing frustrated. It's hard not to think that there may be some validity to that. And I don't know if it came in the form of a formal meeting, or it's just things that are being observed behind the scenes, or it's the comments that where he said after Game 7, as currently constructed, they can't win. But it really seems like Josh Kroenke has started to back off of this idea that Nikola Jokic is never going anywhere, which that in and of itself is kind of a sad commentary on where the Denver Nuggets are right now, just 2 years removed from a title. That sounded like a dude that was hedging. Take your thoughts on that, 719-247-1313. But back to if we're in the second apron and the wrong guy gets hurt, we're going to have to trade Nikola Jokic. It's funny that he said that today, because we have seen a team that recently had the absolute last person that could get hurt, and they're in the second apron. That is the Boston Celtics. And the Boston Celtics today have had, I won't call it a fire sale. Let's call it a little bit of a yard sale. Or maybe they've listed a couple of items on eBay. Not everything must go, but there are a couple things that they wanted to move on from. So Jason Tatum is out for all of next season. He's their best player, right? That is the wrong player to get hurt. Of anybody on the Celtics, wrong player to get hurt. Celtics financially are in that second apron or very up against it. Okay. So then they wouldn't have a Nikola Jokic per se, but it would be, let's say, Jaylen Brown, right? You're not trading Tatum because he's hurt, but he serves as the wrong player getting hurt. You have Jaylen Brown. And today, the Boston Celtics have made two moves, neither of which involve Jaylen Brown. They moved Drew Holiday back to the Portland Trailblazers, which somebody in Portland needs to explain to me that why now they're okay. Now they're ready for Drew Holiday. Last year, no, we're not ready for him. We're going to just give him away to the Celtics and allow them to run away with the NBA title. But now we want Drew Holiday. Now we're ready for him. That's kind of weird. But the Celtics trade Drew Holiday to the Blazers and get back a fine player in Anthony Simons, a player that I saw beat the Nuggets this year in Portland. I was there. I watched it. I like Anthony Simons as a player. So that's hardly, obviously, I'm sure Celtics fans are lamenting that Drew Holiday had to be given up, but I think they look at Anthony Simons and go, okay, he's a different player, but he's a nice player. And then, breaking news within the last hour, the Celtics have also moved on from Kristaps Porzingis, and Porzingis is going to Atlanta. Now, the return, you have to say, for the Celtics, not as good. They got George Niang, who is not as good as Anthony Simons, and they got 1 second-round pick. Okay, so that doesn't feel like equal value. That feels like they gave away Kristaps Porzingis. But my point in relating it to the Denver Nuggets is here is a team that perfectly illustrates what Josh Kroenke was talking about this afternoon. The wrong player got hurt. And yet they are doing other things other than trading, in their case, the best remaining player. And you know where I am with Jaylen Brown. I love Jaylen Brown. I can say that he's not a better overall player than Jason Tatum, but I have a greater affinity for Jaylen Brown. I would want him on my team. But, Jason Tatum, they're up against it cap-wise, or with the second apron. They're in a salary cap prison. The wrong player, the absolute wrong player got hurt and is out for the entirety of next season. And Brad Stevens, who has proven to be elite at what he does, took 2 players that aren't Jaylen Brown and moved them, and actually ended up with a decent player coming back in Anthony Simons that I think Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Anthony Simons with the other role players the Celtics have, don't fully put them out of the running in the East. I don't make them the favorite without Jason Tatum, obviously, but let's not think that the Celtics are going to be drafting in the lottery next year. The Boston Celtics are a great example of what the Denver Nuggets, this ghost of Christmas future that visited Josh Kroenke apparently in the middle of the night saying he would have to trade Nikola Jokic. Here are the Celtics, and they're like, no, we don't have to do that. We don't have to let go of Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. We'll keep them both. And we'll even get back an intriguing younger player in Anthony Simons while we're at it. This isn't the death of the Boston Celtics. So it's really continuing to be a rough day, a rough few days if you count, Oklahoma City winning the title, Kevin Durant going to the Houston Rockets, Dario Saric opting in. It has not been good news cycles for the Denver Nuggets. But here are the Boston Celtics making other moves that, yes, they hurt. Yes, they're making the team weaker, but they're not including the pillars of their franchise. So I don't know where this doomsday scenario, where this comes from Josh Kroenke. And that's why I say I think he's trying to get people to stop piling on him in the Denver Nuggets organization. He's made it very clear today. It's all about relationships and kumbaya and everybody loving everybody. He doesn't like the fact that Sean Keeler, Mark Kisla, your favorite Denver radio host, anonymous bots on Twitter are all saying essentially it's Jokic versus the Nuggets because Jokic is doing everything he can and nobody else is pulling their weight, with the exception being Aaron Gordon, who is an absolute hero for going out there and playing in Game 7. Everybody else is falling short on their end of the bargain. And I think that Josh Kroenke doesn't want that to make its way into the locker room, doesn't want that to permeate throughout the organization. So he said, not only are we doing everything we can, if we do what you guys think we should do, Nikola Jokic would be traded, which, again, not logical and just proven by Boston. You don't have to do it. But I think that's what he's trying to do. But like everything else today, fell way short of making his case. These moves, though, for the Celtics, by the way, again, I'm not burying Boston. But, the Porzingis one, it's like you're getting nothing back. That is a straight dump of Kristaps Porzingis. Drew Holiday, it's like you got a Drew Holiday and Derek White. And you end up getting another scorer in Anthony Simons. I think Brad Stevens, man, there's a reason why he's about the best we have in all of professional sport. Not only did he put together that wagon of a Boston Celtics team that won the title last year, now he's shedding parts, and the Celtics aren't actually terribly off. I mean, and you also are looking through the lens of the Eastern Conference, right? Like, that's part of it. Part of the reason why I'm not ready to write off the Boston Celtics completely next year is because Damian Lillard will probably miss most, if not the entire year. Tyrese Halliburton definitely out for the entire season, and the New York Knicks still do not have a head coach, which therein lies your it could be worse moment of the day, because we need these with the Denver Nuggets because nothing is working in their favor. At least they were able to find people to take the job that they were offering. The New York Knicks can't. Their latest interview is with Micah Nori, spent obviously time in Denver, is the lead assistant on Chris Finch's staff in Minnesota. It actually would be a good hire for them. Micah Nori's smart coach, right? And he's Jokic's boy. If Micah Nori, this just popped in my head. If Micah Nori goes to the Knicks, does that become Jokic's next logical destination? I'm just connecting dots. Everyone is looking to his buddy that plays basketball that's in LA. How about his buddy who coaches an entire team? Micah Nori gets the Knicks job. You watch. Like, you may be laughing right now. You watch. Somebody on First Take is going to say that what I'm saying right now. They're going to take the clip from Josh Kroenke today, and if the New York Knicks end up hiring Micah Nori, there will be some smart basketball guy, whether it's Bontemps or Windhorst, and they're going to say, Micah Nori has a great relationship with Jokic, and somebody on one of those garbage morning shows will then connect those dots and say Nikola Jokic to New York. And what would the Knicks offer? Karl Anthony Towns, of course, the very guy Knicks fans want to move on from. It's just going to happen. Like, I know. But the Knicks interviewing Micah Nori, like, it's good, but also Micah Nori is not a better coach than Tom Thibodeau. Right? You can't, in a vacuum, Micah Nori is a really good hire if the Knicks go through with it. But this hire is not made in a vacuum. This hire is being made weeks after they fired Tom Thibodeau, a guy who brought that organization success they hadn't experienced in my lifetime, and days after they were rebuffed with extreme prejudice by half of the NBA when they tried to poach their head coaches. It's not a great hire given all of that. But given where the Knicks are at this juncture, I think Micah Nori would be a great hire for them. So we'll see. I like the Knicks hiring Micah Nori. So that'd be one team. Orlando's up and coming with the move for Desmond Bane. And then you have the Celtics. Am I missing anybody? Again, Tyrese Halliburton out for the entire year. Damian Lillard out for most of the year. I mean, I think that's kind of the list in the East. Unless Detroit. Are you going to buy the future stock on the Pistons with Cade Cunningham? I think they're going to be in contention soon, just not this year. And how about the Hawks with Porzingis and Trae Young? I don't know that that's great, but it's fun. It's fun to have Porzingis and Trae Young together on the team. But it's here as Josh Kroenke is saying, espousing this doomsday scenario. Here's a team that is in the same situation that the Denver Nuggets are, suffered a terrible injury to their best player. And yet they have made multiple moves, and none of them have involved, now they're with Jason Tatum hurt, their best player in Jaylen Brown. Or maybe that's just Brad Stevens. And unfortunately, Brad Stevenses do not grow on trees. There was no Brad Stevens farm that Josh Kroenke could go to and pluck him out of the ground and make him the general manager. He had to do this dual co-manager stuff. 719-247-1313. Back to wrap up the show after this. Tomorrow night, Switchbacks FC back at it at Widener Field. Match 2 of the Jägermeister Cup. They will be facing their old rivals, San Antonio FC. The first fans through the gates at 6 p.m. will get a limited edition Switchbacks scarf. Yeah, you're going to want to be there tomorrow night, and I have tickets for you, a pair of them. 13th texter to text Switchbacks and your name to 719-247-1313 will win a pair of tickets to tomorrow night's match. Of course, if you can't make it out, or even with the app, you can listen to Roland and I while you're watching. Just saying. But Roland and I will begin our coverage at 6:30, kickoff at 7 o'clock. 2 matches this week in the Jägermeister Cup for Switchbacks FC, and they're off to a good start. 1 match down, got the dub. Pick up a couple of dubs this week. They're going to be advancing in this in-season tournament. So NBA offseason so far living up to the hype, wouldn't you say? We haven't even gotten to the offseason yet. Already Porzingis on the Hawks. Drew Holiday goes to the Blazers. Kevin Durant to the Houston Rockets. And a move that is just not getting talked about enough, but is just as consequential as Kevin Durant going to the Houston Rockets, Jordan Poole going to the New Orleans Pelicans. Like, do we need to start talking about the Pels passing up the Denver Nuggets because they have Jordan Poole? Okay, we don't. That was a lesser trade, but still you go, oh, Jordan Poole, I know that guy. That was the guy that got punched by Draymond Green. Forever. That's what he will be. And then CJ McCollum goes from New Orleans, because that didn't work out, to Washington. So now the Wizards have this massive expiring contract. Wonder what they're going to do with that. Because I'm trying to get creative for the Denver Nuggets. CJ McCollum on the Denver Nuggets, money aside, I don't hate that. Problem with CJ McCollum is he made so much dang money, and I don't know that Washington's going to buy him out. Would you like the $3.4 million that Russell Westbrook didn't want, CJ McCollum? Can you imagine? Well, you're going to have to, because it's happening. Zion Williamson and Jordan Poole on the same team, 2 of the most unserious basketball players of my entire life. They're going to be on the same team. And by the way, don't let anyone ever tell you that the team that didn't get the best player in the deal won the deal. Remember how the Pelicans made out like bandits? They fleeced the Lakers. You're going to get Zion, and they're going to get this and all that. Has not worked out for the Pelicans, has it? Set their franchise back quite a bit. Keep that same energy with the Dallas Mavericks, because tomorrow night they're going to draft Cooper Flagg, and people are going to fall in love with the Mavericks. Don't do it. Don't do it. I know the universe or the dark forces that Adam Silver employs gave the Dallas Mavericks a lifeline by giving them Cooper Flagg, but come on. Dallas being a trendy pick, and they're going to be, but it's like, no, if the universe is at all fair and just, the Dallas Mavericks will not succeed with Cooper Flagg. Right? You don't deserve to succeed. And I hate that Cooper Flagg's going to end up there. Because who knows what that organization is going to do. But NBA draft tomorrow night. We'll add to it. A little bit of intrigue. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But the NBA offseason not actually started yet. And we've had some significant moves, not from the Nuggets, but other teams. Nuggets, they can't decide which guy in the front office is allowed to pick up the phone and make a trade call. Let me leave you with this, something that is already great and now has gotten better. I've been telling you for a while about Low T Center. If you need testosterone replacement therapy, they are the place to go. They are the authorities on this. So much good about Low T Center, but now they add Synergenics to the mix. And now it's like they have their own super team. They've been changing patients' lives for a combined 25 years. Not only have they dominated the history of men's health, but together they are pioneering the future with the Synergenics Health app that utilizes technology to deliver patient care beyond any other men's health services. You could trust Synergenics and Low T Center to maximize your health, to get you feeling your best with the added convenience of the Synergenics Health app. And you can even get on this Synergenics Health app, download it, and book an appointment at Low T Center. How about that? Or you can always log on to fixmylowt.com. That's fixmylowt.com. Appreciate your patronage. Talk to you tomorrow. Busy day tomorrow. Have the show, U.S. Senior Open preview, see what else happens in the NBA, and then, of course, switchbacks in San Antonio. So I will talk to you tomorrow at 3. Enjoy your evening.